Just to pick up on one thing that my colleague, Senator Alison Mary Higgins, said, where she talked and warned against creating fear around the existence of transgender people. I think that's a concern that everybody can share, and everybody should be against any creation of fear around transgender people. And Senator McDougall, I think, spoke very eloquently, and he put his finger on the important word, being empathic. But there's a different thing when we talk about the activity of trans activists and the implications for that, for child protection in particular, and for the protection of women's safety and their privacy. And that is a live issue in our society, thanks to the ideology that has access to government and that is not being opposed by you as long as you go with this controversial definition of gender. I also want to remind you, in passing as it were, some people here may be familiar with the crime novels of Michael Connelly and the character of Hieronymus Bosch, otherwise known as Harry Bosch. And he has a phrase that he resorts to in these novels, that everyone counts or nobody counts. And I think that expresses my concern about the exclusivity. And I endorse everything that Senator McDougall had to say about the capacity of the courts to take hatred into account in whatever form it manifests itself. In fact, it seems, having listened to what he said, that there is actually no actual substance in this bill in terms of what it's going to change in practice, other than one thing, the radical definition of gender. And I want to say to you, Minister, two things. I want to draw your attention, because of what you said earlier, about the lack of concern for the protection. First of all, people are protected in the law as it stands if they are attacked, whatever category of person they are. And judges are in a position, as we've heard, to take into account the particular circumstances, including hatred against a minority group. So let's not pretend that it's a free-for-all against minorities in our society at the moment as far as crime goes. There are regular, and rightfully so, prosecutions. We know the number of hate-related crimes. It's about 600 or 700 according to the last year's statistics from the Gardaí. And they are a very small percentage, by the way, of crime and criminality and attacks on persons that take place in our society. I think there were something like 22,000 assaults in 2022. And the government could stand accused of virtue signalling in relation to one category of crime where redress is available, including redress that takes account of a hate motive, and failing to do enough in relation to a vastly greater number of victims of crime and attack. I also want to draw your attention to the Amendment 100 that I had, where, having accepted the principle that you are going to have groups who will have particular protection in this area, I say, well, if you are going to do that, be as inclusive as possible. And I talked about the hatred, referring to characteristics of the victim, including his or her age, communications difficulties, colour, disability, family connections, health, nationality, national status, and here's the key words, Minister, gender, gender identity or expression. That's what I said in my amendment. That's what you should acknowledge. I am not proposing the exclusion of people who have gender identity issues, however they express themselves. And I went on to include political views or affiliation, because I think that counts too. Religion, race, sex characteristics, or sexual orientation. Not only that, Minister, but I have to draw your attention to the Victims of Crime Act 2017, which gets it right. It talks about gender as a basis for victimising people, and it talks about gender identity or expression. To make this controversy go away, all you need do is say, I'll think about that, I'll make that change. And I defy you to tell me, because certainly Senator Ward wasn't able to tell me on News Talk today, how that would lessen in any way the protection you want to give to people who might be victims of crime based on hatred towards their gender identity or expression. It is because you are redefining gender that you are doing a serious disservice. And I say this with, as you know, I have personal respect and for you and your family, and that will continue. But I have to say this in all seriousness, and I am not grandstanding here. You will be facing the electorate in a few weeks, And you will not deserve the vote of any parent of school-going children if you do not change this definition of gender. Because it is as serious as this, Minister, that there is serious endangerment of children in our schools based around gender politics.
No, excuse me. That's quite a significant accusation to be making. And earlier there was reference to particular organisations and their engagement in school training. So I think it's a.
Can I just say, that wasn't an accusation. That was a statement of opinion about the seriousness of this issue. Like, people either think that Senator McDougall and Senator Keoghan, or Senator myself, are standing up here, for the good of our health because we found it kind of an argument to make. I can assure you it's a lot more serious than that. There is no rational basis, Minister, for not separating gender and gender identity as two separate characteristics, groups in the list of characteristics. Lesbian, gay and bisexual people want this separation. And let's be clear, it was Belong To, that organisation, that wants to change the definition of gender and nobody else. It was their submission that you have chosen to hear. And they are an example of the group, Senator McDougall mentioned Tenney, who are pushing the idea of gender spectrum, the idea that people may be neither male nor female. That attitude, that politics, that unscientific, that non-evidence-based ideology is proving toxic to children, not just in Ireland, but all over the Western world. And that is why this issue...
Senator, do not intervene.
That is why this issue, it relates...
Next to speaking,
for the assistance of Senator Flynn, it relates to Senator Keoghan's amendment.
Just give me the floor for a minute. At this stage, I think it'd be easier for me, sitting in the chair, if each senator could reference the amendments that they are speaking to, because I think this is moving into a general discussion rather than speaking to the amendments. So, any senator from now on, can they identify what amendment within the group that they are speaking to?
To Amendment 9 from Senator Keoghan, seconded by myself. It was Belong To that wanted the change in this definition of gender. And this new definition of gender is about causing confusion in the law, and it does lay the basis for changes to other gender-related legislation. Nobody knows what the new definition means, but it achieves a specific aim, which is to create an oppression of those who stand by the gender binary. Now, I accept that in the context of this bill, it relates to this bill, which has to do with hate offences, and Senator McDougall showed all the other bills that are being impacted. But you are setting down a precedent. And can I just tell you, and I'm about to call you out on something, Minister, you say that we needn't worry, it's only about a bill that has to do with hate offences and it doesn't have to do. But I actually have evidence that your thinking is otherwise. And I want to refer to, if I can get it open, I want to refer to an email, a reply to Deputy Richard Bruton, who brought a concern towards you from a constituent. And yes, it relates to gender. Yes, it does, Senator Flynn. Yeah, don't be afraid of ideas.
The debate, sorry, Senator Mullen. Senator Mullen, sorry, Minister.
I'm afraid that children will be harmed as a result of the ideology that is influencing your government. God
help my two boys.
Can I just remind you, Senator Mullen, the debate isn't about...
Your two boys are lucky to have great parents. Let's not bring that into it.
Senator Mullen,
there's a lot of other vulnerable children in this country.
Can I just remind Senator... I'm very happy to have assistance to chair that proceedings by everybody. Thank you. Could I remind Senator Mullen, this is about gender, not about gender. It's the bill.
It's to Senator Keoghan's amendment, which relates to the definition of gender. And I'm following up on what Senator McDougall has said and what everybody is talking about. And this won't take long, but it's very revealing.
Yeah, no, you need to show respect to the chair as well, everybody, in terms of addressing your remarks through the chair, not to the Minister directly, please, and not, if we could please...
As you will be aware, the Minister says to Deputy Bruton, transgender and non-binary people, domestically and internationally, are unfortunately and increasingly targeted by hate crime offenders. The meaning of gender for the purposes of this legislation therefore has to recognise that offenders target individuals based on non-conforming gender identities like non-binary, in addition to binary gender identities such as male or female. That is not true, as you know, because you could use the distinctive terms gender and gender identity or expression in order to address the concern there in your first line. You go on to say, the hate crime bill is concerned with offenders' behaviour and not the victim's legal status, etc. No issue there. Here we go. Inclusion of the broader meaning of gender in the bill to include transgender and non-binary persons was on foot of recommendations from civil society organisations representing vulnerable and minority groups, including the Coalition Against Hate Crime, as part of the pre-legislative scrutiny process. You do not mention belong to. We are talking here about activist groups that have had access to the ear of government. You have not, in the 15 months or whatever it was since the second stage.
Sorry, just 1 second. Is there a point of order?
Yeah, there's 23
What's the point of order?
representative organisations behind us.
Thank you, Senator.
Just so everybody knows, the collective group against hate crime, Minister, is made up of LGBTQI plus organisations as well.
That's not a point of order,
and,
but thank you.
Yeah, and Adam Long is actually in the room, who is a gay man. So just want to make that point of order.
But thank you, Senator Mullen, please.
Yeah, and everybody is welcome to this. But as I said, I think during the surrogacy legislation, or words to this effect, it would be a sad day if we had to exclude certain points that we're making in here as elected representatives because of who might be sitting in the gallery. Everybody deserves respect, but the gallery are here to listen to what the parliamentarians have to say, not the other way around. We hear them when they're lobbying, and then we come in to legislate, if we get a chance. Now, so my point is this, that the government has not been consulting, or, like, I think I saw a reported, Minister, correct me if I'm wrong, in recent days, that you had said, when asked about what you were going to do on the gender definition, you were going to say, well, we'll wait to see what is brought in. Now, correct me if you didn't say that, fair enough. But clearly, you have made no attempt to deal, to my knowledge at least, with any of the people who express concerns in this chamber at second stage, clearly, about the problem with the gender thing. And since then, and I did not mention the Victim of Crimes Act 2017 distinction between gender and gender identity and expression on that occasion. I don't know if you've had any chance to give that consideration, but having regard to what Senator McNeill was saying, I think you should take that on board and say, yes, there is a precedent here that we can use without victimising anybody, and you remove a whole lot of controversy, and you allay, and I will have to say it, the concerns of parents, because this stuff influences what's going to go on in schools, and this is the next point I wanted to make to show you why that's the case. If I could get my phone to behave. Should have printed it off, and I apologise. So the short email to Deputy Bruton concludes thus. An Garda Síochána's diversity and integration strategy and pulse systems contains similar concepts of gender in its discriminatory motives. We cannot be in a situation whereby operationally the Gardaí have a wide so-called progressive, I'm saying so-called, progressive understanding of a concept such as gender, but the legislation dealing with offences against a protected group of persons is far more restrictive. So what you're saying is, because the Guards have chosen to be expansive about what gender means and to confuse into it gender expression and identity, which is subjective, that somehow the law must follow. It's supposed to be the other way around, Minister. The legislature is supposed to set the rules and the Gardaí are supposed to implement the law. You also mentioned, by the way, that the Gardaí say it's necessary. I'd be grateful for your help on that matter. Where has it been said by the Gardaí that this definition of gender is necessary in the law? It is for the legislature, for the Oireachtas, for Oireachtas Éireann to set the tone for what the Gardaí must do and for what they must implement. And finally, and here's the giveaway. You say that this has nothing to do with other pieces of legislation. Following a review of the Equality Act that is currently being undertaken by the Department of Children, Equality, Disability, Integration and Youth, definitions used in the bill may be reconsidered to ensure consistency in definitions across the statute book. Well, what this sounds like to me is that you're saying, yeah, we intend to revisit all these definitions of gender across the statute book. It sounds to me like you're admitting there that you're laying the groundwork for this, and this is the first shot of the gun. So you can't come in and tell us here, you know, nothing to see here, this only applies to this legislation, when you're telling people in your own party this is part of a wider revisiting of the meaning of gender. Correct me if I'm wrong, but that has blown the gaff on you. And the problem, that is the concern that people have, that there is this agenda going on. And we saw this in the referendums as well. You mentioned the Department of Children. Again, we had the same problem in the referendums with ideological language leading to a badly worded amendment that was roundly rejected by the people. And that ideological language was rooted in this agenda to redefine gender. If gender is redefined, this puts pressure on the system. It puts pressure on the curriculum. It bolsters those who want to imbue in children from an early age that, if they're not comfortable in their gender identity, that they may actually be a different gender. And that has a lot of medical professionals worried. And you know about the controversies in relation to puberty blockers, in relation to the sending of people to Tavistock, the dangerous surgeries.
Senator Mullen, just one second. Sorry, Senator Flynn. Gamalashka, thank you. It's not off the topic. To be fair, Senator Mullen, despite your views, is entitled to his view, and I would ask all members to allow people to speak without interruption. You will get a chance to speak next, conscious that we are due to conclude at 8:30, and I could ask members to stick to the relevance of the amendments that we were discussing as well, please. Thank you. Senator Mullen.
Thank you. And I am near the end of my comments to the Minister. It was belonged to, I repeat, in its submission, which I don't have to hand, that sought that this new expansive definition of gender. They want to replace the binary with the spectrum. And they want to harness all laws built around the binary to apply to the spectrum. And that, as I said, is the work that was going on in the background with regard to the Equality Acts by the Minister of Children, and it was the same ministry that was so misleading on the referendums. I'm reminded of the phrase, fool me once, then shame on you, fool me twice, shame on me. So, there is controversy between LGB and trans activists about gender identity, its impact on, as I said, women's security, women's spaces, on lesbians and so on. That's real. But when we talk about the possible implications for this, for child protection, then that should be at the top of our tree of concern. And that is my sincere concern, Minister. You and Senator Ward and others may think I'm mistaken, but an awful lot of people don't think I'm mistaken. An awful lot of people are wondering, why the hell is this strange new definition of gender being smuggled in with this bill? Under the cloak of having listened to objections and taken out whole swathes of the bill that actually had merit. So we actually have the worst of both worlds in a sense, in that we're getting nothing new on incitement to violence or hatred that would update it in the way that Senator McDowell has rightly said is so desirable, if necessary to so update it. There are two views on how the 1989 legislation might work. Happy to accept at any stage and support amendments that make sure that what applies in terms of what people do in mainstream and traditional media should also apply in terms of combating hatred in the digital online space. But we're not getting that because you've taken that away. But what you have left in is a toxic definition of gender. And there is no reason for you to have done it except that the government is caving in to either an element within the government or certain NGOs, which I have named, who have a highly politicised view of gender. This isn't actually about protecting people from being assaulted in the streets at all. It is about mainstreaming an idea that people are not born male or female, but that they may be actually a combination of genders or no gender, or all that, that new spectrum that is having a negative impact, particularly on children where they are encountering this ideology. And you only have to ask, as I said, some of the medical professionals who have been vocal in recent times to say, we need to go very, very much more carefully and more slowly here. And that's why I do say, and I'm on the record as saying that school boards of management need to do a risk assessment from a child protection point of view and aspects of the SPHE curriculum, You need to do, Minister, in my view, a risk assessment on this definition of gender, because it has, it lays the groundwork, it's not evidence-based, it inappropriately conflates the reality of one's gender, be it male or female, and one's gender expression or identity, which may vary according to the person. And everybody deserves respect, everybody deserves empathy, and all of these people deserve to be protected against crimes motivated by hatred against them, either individually or as a group. You have the solution to the problem that has been offered to you here today, which is to accept a new definition of gender, or to at least, or to split in whatever way you choose. You have the time to do it if you wish, to split gender from gender identity and expression. And in so doing, following the precedent you have from the 2017 legislation, you solve the problem. You get rid of this definition of gender and you make it clear. Everything is covered then when you put down gender, which people know what it is, male, female, including people availing of a preferred gender under the 2015 legislation. They're covered under gender, and everybody else under the sun who has a gender identity or expression issue and deserves the protection that you want for them can be covered by using that phrase. The problem is solved. If you don't accept that solution to the problem, then, Minister, nobody can be fooled but that there is an ideological reason, perhaps not one that you personally subscribe to, but one that has you in its grip because you are a member of a government that has chosen to cave into it. And that has child protection implications, I have to tell you sincerely and in all honesty. And that is why I say you and your government colleagues must be answerable to the electorate if you take a risk on this when you don't need to do it. You know, this is the novelty here is coming from you and from the government. We have law that distinguishes between gender and gender identity and expression. We have precedents in legislation that extend protection in this area to include all people. Why not go for it?